I didn't want to do it at first, and they'd been after me to do one for about 2 years. And I thought, well, there's going to be 22,000 people there, so we can throw in some new songs maybe and everything. But as it turned out, we didn't. We played all old songs, and they just sort of stared at us. And it was a strange experience, really. It was about 6 months ago.
When Ricky Nelson died in that plane crash in 1985, everyone thought he was broke. His divorce had cost $1 million. He owed money everywhere, and it seemed his children were about to inherit nothing but debt. Then his brother discovered a hidden will, and lawyers uncovered something shocking. Record companies had allegedly been underpaying him for decades. What followed eventually transformed his 4 children into millionaires. The settlement figures were reportedly so large that they stunned many observers. Yet one son received nothing, and the reason remains one of the most controversial parts of the story. Ricky Nelson was born on May 8, 1940, in Teaneck, New Jersey. He was born into entertainment royalty. His father, Ozzie Nelson, led a successful big band, while his mother, Harriet Hilliard, was already a movie actress. From the beginning, Ricky's life unfolded in public view. By the time he was still a baby, his family's radio program, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, had already become famous across America. Rather than growing up in a quiet neighborhood, Ricky spent his childhood surrounded by recording studios, sound stages, rehearsals, and scripts. Family dinners often turned into work sessions, and vacations sometimes became material for future shows. It was a life lived under a permanent spotlight where even ordinary moments felt scripted. When Ricky was just 8 years old in 1949, he joined the radio show alongside his brother David. While most children his age were riding bikes and trading baseball cards, Ricky was memorizing lines, earning paychecks, and becoming a celebrity before reaching double digits. Audiences loved his natural charm, and by age 10, he was already a household name. But fame carried a cost. There were no normal childhood experiences, no sports teams, and few ordinary friendships. His playground became a studio, and much of his childhood was sacrificed for the family brand. In 1941, the family moved to Los Angeles and settled into a green and white Cape Cod colonial home at 1822 Camino Palmero. That house became more than a residence. It became one of the most recognizable homes in American television history, appearing in countless episodes of the family show. Fans drove by just to catch a glimpse of it. Yet inside those walls, life was still business. Scripts were written there. Rehearsals took place in the living room, and Ozzie ran everything with military-like discipline. The children were part of the operation, and their real lives became inseparable from their television characters. This blending of reality and entertainment made the show enormously successful, but it blurred the line between what was real and what was performance. Ricky also battled severe asthma throughout his youth. It kept him away from school, separated him from friends, and sometimes left him breathless after simple activities. While other children played outdoors, Ricky spent long hours inside reading and listening to music. The illness made him thoughtful, observant, and quiet, qualities that later became part of his screen presence. Behind the calm charm that audiences admired was a lonely boy trying to breathe and feel normal. When the radio show first began in 1944, actors were hired to portray the Nelson children. Ricky and David disliked the arrangement and wanted to play themselves. By 1949, they had taken over those roles. It was a groundbreaking concept, turning real family life into entertainment, and viewers became fascinated with the Nelsons. Ricky wasn't simply acting. He was living his life in front of America. In many ways, the Nelson family became the nation's first reality television family decades before the term existed. Then came 1957. At 17 years old, Ricky performed Fats Domino's I'm Walkin' on the family television show, and the response was electric. Teenagers across the country were captivated. The single sold more than 1 million copies and instantly turned Ricky into a teenage sensation. Yet away from the cameras, his life was already becoming far more complicated. Fame opened doors to parties, relationships, and fast living. He appeared polite and wholesome in interviews, but became increasingly rebellious behind the scenes. He grew out his sideburns, slicked back his hair, and challenged his parents' control in small but meaningful ways. Later that year, his first Imperial record single, Bebop Baby, generated an astonishing 750,000 advance orders before it even reached stores. After release, it surpassed 1 million copies sold and entered the top 5 on both the pop and R&B charts. Ricky was no longer merely a teen idol. He was a major business enterprise. His debut album, Ricky, topped the charts, proving that youth and charisma could generate enormous profits. Record companies recognized the commercial potential, and Ricky became one of the most successful examples of the teen idol phenomenon. At the same time, he became involved in several serious relationships that would have surprised many fans. One of them involved Marianne Gaba, who played his girlfriend on television. Off-screen, the relationship became intense, and Ricky later admitted they spent long periods together in ways that would have caused scandal in the conservative culture of the 1950s. He even gave her a gold ring inscribed with a personal message. She believed it represented commitment, but Ricky moved on to other relationships, including one with singer Lori Collins, with whom he wrote music. To the public, he remained America's clean-cut sweetheart, but privately, he was simply a teenager navigating fame, temptation, and pressure. His parents were deeply concerned. Ozzie and Harriet were not just parents, they were managers, producers, and gatekeepers. Ozzie maintained strict control over Ricky's finances, keeping most of the money Ricky earned and providing only a limited allowance. Relationships were discouraged, engagements were prevented, and Ricky's personal life was closely monitored. Yet the more pressure he felt, the more he rebelled through secret romances and late-night parties. By the late 1950s, he was still the face of America's favorite television family. But behind the scenes, he was pulling further away from parental control. In October 1957, his debut album Ricky reached #1 on the Billboard LP chart, making him the youngest artist to achieve that distinction at the time. His success was not accidental. Ozzie Nelson had created a powerful promotional machine. At the end of television episodes, Ricky would perform a new song before millions of viewers. The exposure was unmatched. When he sang I'm Walkin' on the show, the song quickly climbed the charts. Ozzie integrated Ricky's music into storylines and carefully controlled his public appearances, even refusing opportunities like The Ed Sullivan Show. The strategy worked brilliantly. Then came Poor Little Fool in August 1958, which became the first song ever to reach #1 on Billboard's newly created Hot 100 chart. Written by 15-year-old Sharon Shealy, the song was not originally intended as a single, but radio stations embraced it. Despite Ricky's objections, Imperial Records released it, and it became a massive success, securing his place in music history forever. Between 1957 and 1962, Ricky placed 20 songs in the top 40, second only to Elvis Presley during that period. His first Imperial single sold more than 1 million copies, and his record contract granted privileges almost unheard of for a teenager, including creative control over songs and album artwork. By 1960, his international fan club boasted thousands of chapters worldwide. Ricky was rich, famous, and seemingly unstoppable. In 1959, he also demonstrated acting talent by starring in Rio Bravo alongside John Wayne and Dean Martin. His performance earned a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer. Yet success fueled lavish spending. Custom suits, luxury cars, and exclusive clubs became part of his lifestyle. Reports suggested he enjoyed a monthly allowance equivalent to tens of thousands of dollars today. Fame was not merely bringing wealth, it was reshaping his entire life. In 1961, he scored another major hit with Travel a Man, a song that Sam Cooke had declined. Ricky recognized its potential, and it quickly became a #1 success. Yet behind the scenes, he was increasingly frustrated. Some veteran studio musicians dismissed rock and roll and refused to perform the way he envisioned. One reportedly told him, "Kid, this ain't music." Ricky responded by firing musicians and forming his own band, hiring younger performers who shared his vision. Among them was future guitar legend James Burton. The move cost money, but gave Ricky greater artistic control. However, Even that could not stop the dramatic changes sweeping the music industry. In 1964, the Beatles arrived in America and transformed popular music. Their success reshaped the industry, and many established stars struggled to adapt. Ricky was among them. His singles no longer dominated the charts as they once had. Around this period, he had already begun a relationship with 16-year-old Chris Harmon, daughter of football star Tom Harmon and actress Elise Knox, and sister of future television actor Mark Harmon. They appeared to be a perfect Hollywood couple. Yet the relationship would eventually become one of the most painful chapters of Ricky's life. Raised in luxury, Chris enjoyed an expensive lifestyle, and Ricky attempted to maintain it. Homes, cars, vacations, and designer purchases consumed vast amounts of money. By the late 1970s, financial problems had become severe. When they married on April 20, 1963, the circumstances were far from ideal. Chris was already pregnant, and her parents insisted on a quick wedding. Ricky, who was not Catholic, agreed to raise their children in the faith and completed religious instruction as part of the arrangement. What looked glamorous from the outside was increasingly defined by pressure, expectations, and control. Ozzie and Harriet approved of Chris in a way they had never approved of Ricky's previous girlfriends, seeing the union as a merger of two prominent families. Yet financial pressures grew worse over time. Chris enjoyed spending, Ricky's career cooled, and the bills continued to arrive. As his earnings declined, the marriage deteriorated. Despite attempts to keep everything together, the relationship eventually collapsed. The legal battle that followed reportedly cost more than $1 million. After their marriage, Chris even appeared on the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, earning her own income, but increased earnings only led to increased spending. Neither developed lasting financial discipline, and the money continued to disappear. By the mid-1970s, the Hollywood dream had begun turning into a financial nightmare. In 1965, Ricky and Chris appeared together in the film Love and Kisses, directed by Ozzie Nelson. Although intended as light entertainment, the movie seemed to mirror some of the tensions already developing in their marriage. By 1969, Ricky was desperate to reinvent himself artistically and formed the Stone Canyon Band, blending country and rock influences years before the style became mainstream. He recruited Randy Meisner, who would later help found the Eagles. Unfortunately, commercial success failed to follow. The albums were critically respected but sold poorly. Ricky found himself trading major venues for smaller clubs while struggling financially. He wanted artistic freedom, but the pursuit came at a significant cost. One particularly painful moment arrived on October 15, 1971, during a performance at Madison Square Garden. Trying to establish a new identity, he dropped the Y from Ricky and performed newer material. The audience responded poorly. Whether the reaction was truly directed at him or caused by unrelated events in the crowd remains debated, but Ricky interpreted it as rejection. Humiliated, he left the stage and later returned only after being persuaded to perform older hits. The experience devastated him emotionally. Yet from that disappointment came one of his greatest songs. In 1972, he wrote Garden Party, reflecting on the experience and including the memorable message that you cannot please everyone and must sometimes please yourself. The song became a major hit, reached the top 10, and briefly revived his career. Unfortunately, the momentum did not last. Subsequent releases failed to match its success. By the mid-1970s, record labels struggled to market him, albums underperformed, and opportunities diminished. His marriage continued collapsing while financial pressures mounted. Private schools, luxury homes, and constant touring created relentless strain. Arguments replaced affection, and eventually the relationship reached a breaking point. In 1977, after returning from another tour, Ricky reportedly discovered he had effectively been locked out of his own home. The separation became public and painful. Accusations involving substance abuse, parenting, and finances followed. Both sides blamed the other, and the legal battle dragged on for years. By 1982, the divorce was finalized. Ricky was ordered to pay child support while carrying enormous legal expenses. The process left him emotionally exhausted and financially depleted. By 1985, he desperately wanted a comeback. Although he disliked flying, he purchased a used 1944 Douglas DC-3 aircraft for $118,000, believing it would save money and provide privacy. Unfortunately, the plane had a troubled maintenance history. Mechanical problems occurred repeatedly, and members of his team reportedly feared flying in it. Nevertheless, financial necessity pushed him to continue touring. On December 31, 1985, after further delays caused by mechanical issues, Ricky boarded the aircraft for a flight to Dallas. During the trip, smoke filled the cabin. The pilots struggled to see their instruments and attempted an emergency landing. At approximately 5:14 p.m., the plane crashed near DeKalb, Texas. The wreckage scattered across a large area, and a fire engulfed the aircraft. Only the 2 pilots survived. Ricky, his fiancée Helen Blair, and 5 members of his band and crew were killed. He was only 45 years old. The tragedy shocked the music industry and ended the life of one of America's most famous entertainers just hours before the start of 1986. After his death, the financial situation appeared disastrous. He had 4 children, Tracy, Gunnar, Matthew, and Sam, and substantial debts. His estate was reportedly around $1 million in the red. For a time, many believed he had died without a will. Then his brother David produced a document signed only 4 months before the crash. The will named Ricky's 4 children as heirs and appointed David as executor. Yet there were still numerous debts, lawsuits, and disputes. Chris Nelson challenged aspects of the estate. Helen Blair's family filed legal actions. Creditors demanded payment, and another complicated issue emerged. Ricky had a 5th child, Eric Jude Crew, born after a brief relationship with Georgianne Crew. Although a blood test had established paternity, Ricky's will excluded Eric, stating that paternity remained disputed. After Ricky's death, Georgianne fought on behalf of her son, but the courts upheld the will, leaving Eric without an inheritance. Meanwhile, lawsuits over the plane crash and insurance claims continued. For years, it appeared that little would remain for anyone. Yet the true value of Ricky Nelson's legacy was not found in cash, property, or possessions. It was found in his music catalog. Decades later, investigations and lawsuits alleged that record companies had improperly calculated royalties and withheld substantial revenue. In 2011, the Nelson estate sued Capitol Records, seeking damages related to royalty accounting practices and digital music revenue. The estate claimed that outdated deductions and accounting methods had significantly reduced payments. In 2014, the case ended in a settlement, with Capitol agreeing to pay an undisclosed amount and improve transparency. Later, in 2020, the estate pursued another legal action against Sony Music concerning international streaming royalties. That case reportedly resulted in a settlement worth $12.7 million and a significant increase in future streaming royalty payments. After decades of legal battles, Ricky Nelson's children finally began receiving substantial income from their father's enduring musical legacy, transforming what once seemed like a bankrupt estate into a valuable inheritance.